Welcome to the Comic Scoop, where we explore the kickstart of this brand new series for the Savage Avengers and take a closer look at who these Savage Avengers are. This first issue just released a few weeks ago on May 18th of this year, 2022. It is written by David Papos and drawn by Carlos Magno. I have a awesome variant cover here done by John Romana Jr., which I thought was especially appropriate since he is one of the creators of Anti-Venom right here. So, Savage Avengers. This is the second volume in the Savage Avengers title. The first came out just a couple years ago in 2018. Written by Gary Dugan and drawn by Mike Dioda. We have a couple of returning Avengers and some brand new ones in this new volume. So we'll take a look inside, and as we get to each character, we'll take a moment to talk about those characters. We start off this first issue of the Savage Avengers with a Cloak figure coming from the world of tomorrow in the present day New York, searching for a target. Now that to the side, we're introduced to this death cult who worships the god of Set. And that's when we are introduced to our first hero and returning champion from the first sets of Savage Avengers, Conan the Barbarian. Conan the Barbarian was originally published in Weird Tales in 1932, written by Robert E. Howard. And it wasn't until the 50s where Conan was first featured in a comic book, which was done in Spanish and released in Mexico, taken from one of E. Howard's original stories, Queen of the Black Coast, which is what this story is. That one wasn't specifically... They did not have the official rights for that, so it wasn't until the 1970s where Marvel had gained Conan the Barbarian and started producing more consistent comics within their title. And Marvel had Conan for quite a few years until about the mid to late 90s, and it wasn't until 2003 where Dark Horse had acquired Conan and released their own series for him. And they had him for a couple years, but Conan is back now with Marvel, and they've continued his legacy issues, leading him all the way up to and past 300 issues. So, who is Conan the Barbarian? He's a warrior from the Hyborian Age. His background differs between what story you're particularly reading. And sometimes he is an orphan boy who is seeking vengeance for the destruction of his village. And in other stories, he merely is a curious adventurer that leaves his village to explore the rest of the lands. And fights all kinds of crazy monsters along the way, but he especially is always fighting against someone or something that has something to do with Set. So, snakes. Why does it always have to be snakes? I don't know, but what it usually is with him. So Conan from the Hyborian Age, how is he in the present time? So it's in the first series of the Savage Avengers where he kind of wakes up and he's in our time, and the whole point of that storyline is he's seeking for the Eye of Agamotto to, find a way back home. I know shortly before that series came out, there was two different series. There was the Serpent War, and battle for the Serpent Crown, which aren't necessarily connected with each other, but these two stories both feature Conan within two different timelines. In the first one that had came out, the Serpent War, Conan, along with Moon Knight, um, Agnes, and the fourth guy is escaping my mind right now. But the four of them are all displaced from whatever timelines they're from, and they're all brought together to like a two different times. So that's like my first encounter of having Conan be like outside of his own timeline, and it's in Battle for the Serpent Crown where he's in our present day time. And it's the only thing I can kind of think of. Like I know they're not exactly connected, but these are two good stories to catch up on if you want to see Conan outside of his regular time. So Conan is now like in modern day and finds this death cult that's all very much what he knows. So he is doing what he does best and killing all of them. Yeah. While Conan is doing away with the followers of Set, we move on to a different location, and we are introduced to Agent Anti-Venom, aka Flash Thompson. Now, Anti-Venom was first featured in the Amazing Spider-Man New Ways to Die series, first appearing in issue 569. And he was created by Dan Slott and John Romana Jr. Anti-Venom came from Eddie Brock, the original Venom. Eddie Brock at this time did not have the Venom symbiote, and instead the host for Venom was Mac Gargan, the original Scorpion. Eddie Brock, now being a regular person without the symbiote, after all his years being bonded to this alien, he has now developed cancer. And it is within this storyline that we discover, he's down on his luck and he's taking refuge in this shelter that is run by Mr. Negative. Now, Mr. Negative touches Eddie Brock, and through his touch, heals his cancer, and by healing his cancer there's like remnants of symbiote left within side of Eddie Brock, and that kind of reactivates and turns into the Anti-Venom symbiote. And the reason why he has that name is because he's literally a poison to other symbiotes. Like he just touches Venom and his skin starts to burn. So that's Eddie Brock's Anti-Venom. And right after New Ways to Die, we have Eddie Brock returning as Anti-Venom in his own miniseries, New Ways to Live. So that is Anti-Venom. I mentioned Flash Thompson. Now, some of you are probably wondering, well, Flash Thompson, isn't Eddie Brock Venom? So, a little bit about Flash Thompson. He first appeared alongside with Peter Parker, in their first appearance in Amazing Fantasy 15. We were first introduced to Flash Thompson as the classic high school bully for Peter Parker. Now, years later, they make amends and actually become friends. And Flash eventually enlists and ends up fighting overseas in the Iraq War. Now, this issue of Amazing Spider-Man 578 actually has a real nice backstory for Flash while he was in the war. And unfortunately, while he's in the war, he ends up losing his legs. Now, as a decorated hero, he is given the chance to kind of like show what he's made of as a hero. And he's given the Venom symbiote, and he becomes Agent Venom. Um, which I don't have the first issue of him as Venom, but it's an Amazing Fantasy 654, which came out in 2011. And then in this series of Venom, we have Flash Thompson battling his own demons, as well as trying to be this special ops field agent that they want him to be. Now, Flash Thompson is Agent Venom up until the 2017 story arc of Venom Inc., spanning between Venom and Amazing Spider-Man comics. Within the first issue of Venom Inc., Peter or Spider-Man and Flash are they go to Alchemex, where they encounter Eddie Brock. Now, Eddie Brock reacquires the Venom symbiote, and Flash and Eddie are fighting for control of the Venom symbiote. And that's when Flash Thompson is exposed to this new experimental cure for the Venom symbiote, and he is turned into Anti-Venom at that point. And so it's not specifically the Anti-Venom that Eddie Brock was in New Ways to Die, but his own version. And so he is Agent Anti-Venom up until Amazing Spider-Man 800 during the Go Down Swinging story arc in 2018, where Flash Thompson as Agent Anti-Venom is killed by the Red Goblin. More about that in another video. Now, during the King in Black series, in Venom issue 32, Eddie Brock is dead, and within this symbiote hive mind, he's living in the symbiote hive mind, and he encounters Flash Thompson, and together they're both resurrected. And that is how, long story short, we have Agent Anti-Venom, now alive and in the flesh. We're now introduced to the new Daredevil, who we all knew as Elektra Nachos before. Elektra was first introduced in Daredevil in 1981 by Frank Miller. Most people out there know the character Elektra as the assassin and hired hand of Wilson Fisk. But she is now Daredevil, or one of the two Daredevils, which we get a first appearance of her in King in Black, #1. But she makes her full appearance as Daredevil in Daredevil 25 of the current series, done by Chip Zdarsky. Elektra dons the cowl of Daredevil while Matt Murdock is serving a sentence in prison for murder, for second-degree murder. And he's in prison as Daredevil. And so while he's in prison, he tries to get Tony Stark to buy Hell's Kitchen so he can protect it. Elektra overhears this plan, and she outbids Tony for control. And she does this that way she can be the one to keep Hell's Kitchen safe, and becomes Daredevil to prove to Matt that she is more than just an assassin. So we have Agent Anti-Venom and Elektra, who are both together looking for some information in Alchemex Labs, the birthplace of Agent Anti-Venom. We are back to Conan, who is slaying these cultists left and right. And before he knows it, he is struck by an all too familiar blast. And that is when we are introduced to that cloaked figure in the beginning. Deathlok. Now, Deathlok is a pretty interesting character, and unfortunately, I don't really have standalone issues for him, but he is featured in Maximum Carnage, and he is conveniently on the cover of Part 7 for Maximum Carnage. So I thought I'd use that to have his appearance there while I talk about Deathlok for a moment. So Deathlok is a moniker for these these cybernetic war machines from the future. There are several different people who have been turned into these Deathloks. The original is Luther Manning, who made his first appearance in Astonishing Tales 25 in August 1974, created by Rich Buckler. And Luther Manning is this wounded soldier who is then reanimated in the post-apocalyptic future of 1990. It's kind of funny what in the 70s what they view the 1990s to look like. But so Luther Manning is created into this Deathlok by a Simon Riker. And there are many other people who have been Deathloks, such as John Kelly, Michael Collins, and we even get a live-action version of Deathlok in the Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. show, and that character is Mike Peterson, who isn't in the comics at all, actually. So Deathlok introduces himself to Conan here, and he even says that, like, in the name of the Deathlok army, you have been found guilty of your crimes against the time stream. Be prepared to be erased. So Conan, as I've mentioned before, is displaced from his original time period of the Hyborian Age. And so there are different forces like the TVA who monitor time variance, and Deathlok seems to be on this kind of trail of, alright, Conan is not supposed to be here in time, let's get rid of him. So that's Conan's fate. Now we pause there for a moment to meet our next Savage Avenger. He goes by the name of Clayton Cortez. Seems like a mild-mannered man, but when you make him angry, which you wouldn't like to see him angry, the claws come out. And he turns into the terrifying Weapon H. Kind of looks like a chimera of some sorts there, doesn't he? Well, Weapon H, also another character I don't have much on, and will kind of be the theme of the last few of our Avengers here. But I have this Weapon H side story from the Absolute Carnage series. But Weapon H is this this mercenary who is sent to kill these villagers interfering with a Roxxon pipeline, and instead of taking care of his task, he ends up killing the other mercenaries that he's with. And so he's taken by Dr. Alba, who is part of Weapon X. And with the combination of DNA from Amadeus Cho, who is a gamma monster currently going by the name of Brawn, everyone's favorite Weapon X experiment, Wolverine, and the combination of their DNA along with some reverse engineered nanites from Lady Deathstrike. And all together, we get Weapon H. Now, he's over here just trying to defend himself against this guy that pulled a knife out on him. And we have Dane Whitman in a bar next door that oversees this commotion happening, and he turns into his alter ego of the Black Knight. And that's when he faces Weapon H. The Black Knight. Uh, his first appearance was in Avengers 47 in 1967, created by Roy Thomas and John Buscema. Dane Whitman is the man behind the mask, and the Black Knight is actually a kind of like a family mantle that has been passed down for generations, and goes as far back as like the King Arthur era, where Dane's ancestor was the original Black Knight for King Arthur. And by the time Dane gets a hold of the mantle, his uncle is actually a villain portraying as the Black Knight. And after receiving some injuries from a battle with Iron Man, Dane's uncle decides to tell him, open up his secrets of the family history of the Black Knight, and gives him the ebony blade, and wants Dane to bring honor back to the name of the Black Knight. And as the Black Knight, he has this sword called the Ebony Blade that kind of has like a lust for blood, and seems to drive the owners into madness. As Weapon H and the Black Knight, interact with each other, we go back to Deathlok trying to blast Conan out of this timeline. And Conan is not really doing so well until he grabs a hold of a jigsaw and throws it straight at the Deathlok, slicing his arm right off. Unfortunately, that doesn't do very much because Deathlok just kind of T-1000s his arm back together. And right after that is when we are introduced to our last and final members of the Savage Avengers, Cloak and Dagger. Cloak and Dagger. Two separate people who have came together during hardships. We have Tyrone Johnson, who left his family after he left his family because he had a stutter, and he was mistaken for being a robber when trying to explain what the situation had happened. And then we have Tandy Bowen, coming from a completely different family style, and left her home feeling neglected by her supermodel mother. The two of them met on the streets as runaways, and together they were captured and tested on by a chemist named Simon Marshall, who was working on some synthetic drugs on runaway teenagers. Now, most other teenagers died through these experiments, and instead, Ty and Tandy gain super abilities. Ty, now as the name Cloak, within his cloaks, he holds the Dark Dimension, the Dark Force Dimension, where he can teleport and also engulf his enemies into oblivion there. And Dagger, with the new name of Dagger, can create these light rays of daggers to harm her enemies as well as cure certain illnesses with them. They feature in all kinds of events. They're small-time heroes that usually keep to the streets, keeping it clean from drugs, but they too are also in Maximum Carnage. And Maximum Carnage was my first introduction to not only Deathlok, but Cloak and Dagger. And it's kind of fun that the issue that I have here is their appearance in Absolute Carnage. So we have now met all of our Savage Avengers, and time for us to have them interact with each other. As Conan and the Deathlok are battling, Cloak and Dagger are having a conversation, and after all these years, Ty is about ready to tell Dagger his true feelings for her. But before he can, one of the cultists activates this mad bomb, and everything goes crazy. All of our heroes feel it. Everyone in the city feels it, and it seems to turn everyone crazy. I guess hence the name Mad Bomb. It seems to tap into people's darkest desires and opens up their deepest rage. So everyone's going ballistic here. Everyone except for our heroes, for whatever reason, they are unaffected by the Mad Bomb, and they sense trouble somewhere. And together, as Conan is down on his last legs, the rest of our Avengers come to his aid. Now, it's an all-out battle with the Deathlok, and he holds his own with everyone. Weapon H is no match for Deathlok's sheer power. Even the cunning Elektra can't seem to incapacitate him, but does stab him within his arm. And it is this that gives them the clue that he has some sort of weakness. Elektra tells Conan that the wound around the sigh in his arm is not healing, so tells Conan to cut that off. Conan does not think twice, because this is something he knows all too well, and hacks that arm off. Now, in doing so, Conan has disrupted Deathlok's time, his like time traveling device, and all of them are sucked into this vortex. And once Conan wakes up, it is cold, frigid. They're in the mountains, and he knows all too well that he is finally, after all this time, home. But he's not alone. The Deathlok has followed him there, and all these heroes have unfortunately traveled to the very distant past of the Hyborian Age along with Conan. And that is Savage Avengers #1. Super epic, super awesome, and next week issue 2 comes out, so I'm looking forward to that. I hope you guys enjoyed my video and enjoyed all the backstories for all these characters. I hope it wasn't too convoluted for any of you. Those of you who feel a little lost, I'd be so inclined to comment, and I'll be happy to guide you with more information and chat a little bit more about this awesome group of badass characters. Well, until next time, enjoy the day and keep on reading.